my social life was taken away. I kind of isolated myself. And then I started to rebel. I started to get into drugs. And I even, tried meth one time. And it just, from there, I became a stripper. I had 5 miscarriages, and I continued to be with, and one of those miscarriages was from a partner who pushed me while I was pregnant. And I continued to seek attention in all the wrong places. I was putting my body first, and I think that was largely but a part of my childhood being sexualized.
Hello and welcome back to Healing and Growing Hand in Hand podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Tickle, and our guest today is Kaylea Van Arsdale. And I'll tell you a little bit about her. And I really, we were just talking before we started recording. I really love the subject that we're going to talk about. So she is a business and life coach. And the biggest thing we're going to be talking about is setting boundaries and the clear communication that we need in order to set those boundaries, and probably, of course, talking about enforcing those boundaries, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which is a big
100%.
deal. It's one thing to set them and it's another to enforce them, which, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation here. So, and so she's also going to share her story, a little bit of her story, so that you understand more about where she comes from, and then the importance of setting those boundaries and how it's changed your life. Because that's what you say. You said setting boundaries has changed your life. So welcome, Kaylea.
Thank you for having me today. Yeah, boundaries. It really did turn my life completely around. I went from essentially having no boundaries the majority of my life, and
Right.
it creating such negativity. It
Mm-hmm.
allowed such negativity into my life. It allowed me to treat myself negatively. And so I, fell down into very harmful situations around very harmful people. And I continued to treat myself like I didn't have any worth. And I'll
Right.
say that, it didn't just happen overnight. Like, I am a sexual abuse survivor from a child.
Mm-hmm.
I was 6 years old with my first encounter, and it went on for a period of 9 years before I got the strength to confess, to bring it up. And what had happened was somebody came to our school and shared their story. And it's part of
Whoa.
why I share my stories, because if they hadn't have come to the school and shared their story, myself and my friend made a pact to tell our families what was happening to both of us, and we both were able to kind of, get that out into the open and work towards healing.
I'm just
um,
surprised they allowed that in school, which is wonderful, right? Because,
oh yeah.
unfortunately, we need to talk about these uncomfortable things, but the fact that they allowed that in your school, I mean, that's
It's
pretty
so
amazing.
important,
Mm-hmm.
because if they hadn't of, I don't think I would have had the strength
Mm-mm.
to confess that to my friend, and then the courage to bring it to our families.
Mm-hmm.
And in her case, this is very real circumstances that occur from it, is that her abuser committed suicide when the truth came out.
Oh,
So
dear.
she had to deal with that side of things, and I did
Mm-hmm.
not. But I think it's really important to say that she is doing so well.
Oh,
She's
good.
got, a loving family, and she's actually happy in life. And in my case, when I told my parents, my father didn't believe me. So, and my mother and father were split at that point, and my father lived an hour and a half away. So he said, I want you to come to the hospital near me to get an exam to prove that what you're saying is true, that you have actually lost your virginity. And I was 15 when I got my first pelvic exam. And even afterward, there were things like, well, surely it's not who you say it is. It's probably the schoolboy. There's likely someone down your street. and you're making some fantastic story. Now, I am blessed in that my abuser did come forth with the truth. And so I was vindicated there. But I still didn't really heal. And it was shortly after that it was my social life was taken away. I kind of isolated myself. And then I started to rebel. I started to get into drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I even, tried meth one time. And it just, from there, I became a stripper. I had 5 miscarriages,
Oof.
and I continued to be with, and one of those miscarriages was from a partner who pushed me while I was pregnant. And I continued to seek attention in all the wrong places.
Mm-hmm.
I was putting my body first, and I think that was largely but a part of my childhood
Mm-hmm.
being sexualized.
Yeah, it's not uncommon at all for women to go into exactly the line that you are talking about.
Yeah.
So that is not uncommon at all to
And
become very promiscuous or be real uh, self-sabotaging with their body.
oh, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like a competition. How far could I go? Really? I will say when I got pregnant for the first time, there was that sense of like, okay, I need to do better. But then the miscarriage amplified things all over
Mm-hmm.
again. And so I do think it's important for, everyone to know that this is common. If you're in that kind of state right now, it's, not abnormal.
No,
And there
no,
are ways out. It's not necessarily easy.
right.
And I didn't get out of that life for a long time. It wasn't until I was being held down by my abuser and my 2-year-old walked into the room and they saw them. And I thought, wow, my mom told me this story about how a sibling walked in on my dad holding her down and how she knew that was the point. And here I am repeating the cycle in front of
Mm-hmm.
my child. How dare I? And I didn't have the strength at that point to set those boundaries for myself because it had been years of a very narcissistic, verbal, mental abuse. He primarily just held me, like wrapped arms around me, kept me in place, yelled at me, sometimes threw things at me. Um, but a lot of it was mental, and he had broken
Mm-hmm.
me down to just a shell of a person. So I am thankful that my child was there, in that they were the strength I needed, because I was like, I don't have it, but they need to have a better life. They can't think this is okay and repeat this.
Yeah, break the
I need to
cycle.
do better. Yes, 100%. And thankfully, that gave me the strength to actually leave. And I went to another state with my mother and took my child with me and started the process there. But once again, it wasn't easy.
Mm-mm.
I had already said, like, oh, I don't want to be treated like this. But then at night, I think, is this really what's best for my child? Maybe I should go back because
Mm-hmm.
they're the father. So maybe that's what they need. And I need to sacrifice this for them. And I will say that I'm thankful that I had the support of my mother, who survived abusive relationships, because she knew to keep me up at night, and we'd sit around the table and play cards and drink coffee and talk.
Yeah, because that was the
And
hardest time.
yeah, it really
Mm-hmm.
was. It was the loneliest. And when the thoughts would just start to creep in.
Right, right, right. I mean, what you're describing is being in a narcissistic relationship, and there's just so much to be said about the mind of where our mind goes and what we do in those narcissistic relationships. And, somebody who hasn't experienced it, they so often say, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you just leave? It is so not that easy. You get to a point where you question everything,
Yeah.
everything.
And it's not like from the start.
No,
There's at least a time.
it seeps in.
Yeah. At the beginning, they're so charismatic and they're so affectionate and they give you everything you need. But then it just little bits at a time.
They
And so
chip
how
away.
much do you accept of it?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of gaslighting too. So you
Mm-hmm.
start to question your own thoughts. And um, I'd experience isolation where they would
Yeah.
cut me off with friends and family and then only surround me with friends that really had his best interest.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have anybody
No, they
at the end.
completely isolate you. They can even, take away your finances so that you are completely reliant upon them. They do
Yeah.
everything they can that all you need is them, and that is it, and they control everything about you. My second marriage was definitely headed in that direction. I fortunately at that time had done enough healing. I didn't realize he was a narcissist, but I knew his behavior was crazy.
Mm.
It was so over the top, and I had done enough healing that I was like, yeah, this is not normal. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's it's trying because so much of you is removed and
yeah,
put into place to do whatever they want.
yes.
So, I had to really rediscover myself. So, if you are in that situation, give yourself the grace and the space to find yourself again because you
Yes.
deserve it. You're
Yes.
an entire person, and this is your essentially one life, your one opportunity to experience how wonderful life can be.
Mhm.
And it can be wonderful. It's not just fantasy stuff. And that's where I was at in my life. I had so much negativity that I honestly thought maybe this powerful, positive love only exists in the movies.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy that you say that because I was right there too. I honestly thought all that romance BS was BS. It was just in the
Yeah.
movies. If I happened to see it out in public, it was just people putting on a display. It's so true. You really question all of that. Oh, that's so crazy that you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but that was the point where I was like, you know what? There can't be people out there whose whole jobs is to conspire a story about something that doesn't exist but would be nice to like
Yeah,
that
then
can't be the
reality
whole
sets in.
genre. And I'm like, if that's then it's got to exist. And if it does exist, then why not for me?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And then that started off but what does that look like? What do I actually want?
You're
Like
right.
what kind of treatment, what kind of spouse? What kind of love and relationship? And so I literally created a list of like, this is what I want and this is what I don't want.
Mhm.
And was ready to get back out and dating a month after I have left my abuser because I was so done at that point.
Mhm.
I was like, I'm done. I know love has to exist. It's got to be there for me. And this is what I want. I've got a plan. I'm going to go find it, no matter how many first dates I got to go on. And there were tons. My mother was like, all right, have a good day. See you. See you later. And then we would chat about it. And I'd be like, this one didn't work because of this. And go and choose another first date and another one. And within like a month and a half, I found my now husband of 10 years. He adopted my 2-year old. We have
Hmm.
another child together, and we have not once had an argument.
Mhm.
And it's because I set boundaries about what I wanted and what I didn't want. And there's just communicated those as well.
It's our lives are kind of parallel because I too, with my current husband, it was the same thing. I was done after I went through what I went through with the second husband and the first husband, and the craziness that happened in the second one. I really had to take a step back and go, okay, you got to figure this out because you can't repeat this again. This is crazy. And so I did the same thing, and I literally wrote out the things that were so important to me that were deal breakers. Like, if you don't do this, it's a deal breaker. And and the bad things, and yeah, and if you do this, this is a deal breaker too. And I was very and I just figured, you know what, he's out there, I'll find him. If it might take me a while. And I
Mhm.
too went on a lot of the first, meet, I call them meet and greets. And I hated it. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I felt like I was going to an interview. And I met my husband on probably one of the last meet and greets I went on. And it's true. And I actually do have that marriage that I always thought was fake.
Yeah,
We don't
I love
argue.
that.
We have open communication, and we laugh, and we have a great time, and I trust him. He's my first safe place outside of therapy. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's not because I'm special, right? It's not because I'm special.
It's that you set those boundaries for what you wanted and then you like communicated those and stuck to them. And that's a big thing, like consistently communicating and sticking to them.
Right.
Now, when I came out, like I said, it was been like a month, 2 months before I met my husband. I was still healing.
Hmm.
And knowing that, I communicated it with him. Like, I am healing from this
Yeah.
trauma. There are times where I'm going to come to you unsure of different things because I have been gaslit and lied to. And when I'm coming to
Yeah.
you, I'm not accusing you. I'm just essentially saying, there's this response here. I need to communicate it. And I just need support and like reassurance. And
Clarification. Hmm.
yeah. And I'm like, I may need it again and again. I might need it again tomorrow. And I just need you to continue to just reassure and show up for me. And we're going to continue to just communicate like adults and no arguing because when I get yelled at, I shut down. And I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think that's healthy for
No.
building a relationship. So,
No, once you start yelling, you've lost control, and the conversation needs to take a break. You guys need to take a break for sure.
absolutely.
I mean, that's how my first marriage was, is that, it was yelling and screaming, and I hated it, but I grew up in that too. So I just took the chaos that I had in my childhood and just carried it into the marriage. And it was frustrating. It was exhausting.
It's so normalized
I
in
know.
society too. I
Yeah.
even came across a coach whose whole thing is like, if you're not arguing, your relationship is failing. And I'm like, excuse me,
Wow.
I've not argued. And then they go, well, I've never met anybody who doesn't argue. And I'm like, then why are you posting this information and just spreading acceptance of this negativity when you should really say you don't need to argue to really communicate what you're passionate about or what you're feeling strongly about? You don't need to call each other nasty
Oh,
names,
absolutely not.
like,
No. One of the things that you brought up that I think is really important for the listeners to pay attention to is there's the boundaries, which we were talking about. The other part, though, is communication. And, you know, us survivors carry so much shame. And part of that shame is, when we start becoming aware of sometimes our behavior is, we get triggered or whatever, and we act out in that trigger, and it's shameful. And we should be able to be with people that we can say, look, because I've done it with my husband. Clearly, I'm being triggered. There is crazy
mhm,
stuff coming out of my mouth right now. And he just smiles at me. And you need to be able to have that safe space with someone. And it's okay. And I'm giving everybody permission. It's okay to say that. Even if you don't get the right response all the time, because you're not always going to get the right response, but it's okay to say, you know what? This doesn't feel good right now. I need a minute. I need a minute to process. I just need to get myself together, and communicating that. And that right there will alleviate arguments and
yeah.
misunderstandings, right?
And the alternative is that if not, then essentially you're giving people the opportunity once you've communicated what you're needing, you're giving them the opportunity to respect that. And what they do beyond that is their choice. They could
Correct.
choose to disrespect it and to go across your boundary intentionally anyway. And you may say, I need space so I can think about it. And they follow you into the bathroom and throw something at you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is an opportunity to recognize they're not respecting my boundaries. I deserve to be surrounded by people who will respect those boundaries because
Mm-hmm.
those are healthy boundaries, right? And
Right.
they're not hard. It's not hard to respect that for somebody, you know?
Right, right. And and it's when you first start setting boundaries, and that's what we should start talking about too, is how do we set those first boundaries? Because I know that I understood it for myself. I didn't even understand or know what boundaries were until I was in my 30s. So you could imagine the years of not only did I not set boundaries for myself, I didn't honor other people's boundaries either because I just didn't understand that whole thing. And it makes sense when you think about, especially for those of us who have started their abuse so young, where our boundaries were just stepped on and we had no voice and it was constantly being stepped on. Of course you're not going to understand boundaries. You're not going to understand that you need to set boundaries for yourself. You do. I know for me, I just kind of, oh, that's just how life is. That's how people treat me. I didn't realize that I could be empowered to say, no, 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 I don't want you talking to me like that. And so that's the first thing is I think that when survivors are just beginning their healing journey, just understanding that you have boundaries, you have to figure them out, and you have a right to set those boundaries, and it doesn't matter how that person on the other side takes those boundaries.
Oh, absolutely. You are definitely worth protecting yourself. I will say that a big misconception around boundaries is that it's blocking other people out.
Right.
It's not. It's about protecting your peace and your path towards your dream life, your goals,
Right.
and to make sure that you're able to have that healthy, positive relationship or the business of your dreams or whatever it may be, that you're able to set boundaries around what you want and the path towards it. And then just one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things I say is the best time to start working towards your dream life is yesterday. The second best time is today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's just one step at a time because
One little step.
progress looks so different for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
you
Right.
know? So if you
So,
just show up for yourself.
right. Exactly. And the one thing about boundaries, not all of them are spoken either, right? So there's boundaries that are clearly stated, and then there's boundaries that not necessarily anything is said.
Yeah, there is that. I like to just because I have found so much of my boundaries, like that I let get crossed throughout life,
Yeah.
that a lot of it occurred because I didn't communicate it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I assumed there were boundaries there and then they were like, nope, it wasn't there. And I'm like, dummy me for assuming that based off of like societal norm you wouldn't cheat on me, but I didn't say you shouldn't cheat on me.
Right.
So I tend to take that extra step now just out of protection for myself that I
Mm-hmm.
over communicate boundaries on everything. Where I'm like, you should know this, but I'm still going to say it anyway
Yeah.
because I want to make sure that it is clear that I made that boundary, I communicated it with you. And so that if it does happen to get disrespected, I can go, look, this was a clearly set boundary. And while it does hurt me to have to, like, we need to make some adjustments here. We can't keep going on like this. I can't
Mm-hmm.
allow my boundaries to get disrespected. And I don't want to disrespect your boundaries. So you just got to communicate that. And it can be difficult once you set those boundaries to uphold them
Mm-hmm.
because you're so used to letting them down. You think maybe if I let this thing go, it won't matter because I'll have the perfect person anyway, right? but you let one thing go and then it's another thing and then it's another thing and then it's a
Yeah.
bigger thing and you're
And then
years
you're
into
so far,
it.
yeah, you're so far down the line now. It's hard to go back and yeah, and be clear about something that happened a while ago.
Yeah, it's so much harder the more time you put into it to step away from it. So that's
Right.
why, like, maybe a lot of our first dates were because we had set boundaries and we were like, oh, we got that one's out, because we knew what we wanted.
That's true because that's what we did. And some of the things that we did is, and this is interesting. I had never heard this before, but my husband used to talk about how important the bubble is over your relationship. And in that bubble are our boundaries, really, when I think about it, because in that bubble it's like, okay, it's okay if we do this, but it's not okay if we do this. And you know, and it's interesting, because that's exactly what it is. Now I think about it, he called it a bubble, of protection, but what we did in that bubble is we decided what was acceptable and not acceptable in our relationship, what boundaries we're setting within ourselves,
Yeah.
and and kind of protecting from the world,
Mhm.
and what's acceptable for others coming into our
Yes.
relationship, because you do have that problem of others that try to get involved in your relationship. And so there were definitely set boundaries set that way, but it's funny because he just called it, a bubble of protection over our relationship, and that's really what it is.
Yeah, you guys clearly defined that bubble boundary for you. Like, this is what, will help us to feel safe and secure and loved and supported by each other. And
Right.
this is what we want. And every relationship is different. So it's like you have to figure out what you value and what your partner values, and if you can create that bubble that works for you,
Mm-hmm.
or if maybe they don't value what you value, and so you need to go and find someone else, because not everyone is the right fit for the next
No,
person.
no, no.
You don't have to try to make something work either just because you went on this date. Now I'm obligated to try to make it work. No, you can go on a date and go, my values are, outside of where he wants them. So I'm going to go elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Exactly.
okay.
So let's talk about, for the listeners who have a hard time setting boundaries, haven't set boundaries yet. What should they do? What's the first step? Because I know you said, you got to sit down and figure out what is acceptable and not acceptable in your life, right? Is that the first step?
Yeah. So the first step is really figuring out, what do you want? Not what you think other people say you should want, because everyone has their opinions. And there are certainly societal norms that maybe your desires fall out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, what do you want? You've got this life. It's your one life, and you want to make it as beautiful and as fulfilling and abundant as possible. If you could close your eyes and envision your future, what does it look like? You know,
Totally. That's a great way to start. And writing these down too. When you start coming to these actually writing them down on paper. Don't just keep them in your head, right?
yeah, brainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
Just take 15 minutes and write down all the positive things that you envision in your future. Everything. Do you have kids? Do you have pets? Are you owning your own business? Are you traveling more? What does it look like for you? Like, fully envision what your happy future would look like. Every component of it, and just brainstorm. You don't have to check your spelling, just jot it down. And then take 15 minutes and write the things that you don't want in your life, what you're going to avoid, the things you want to change about your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you get this idea of, like, this is what I really want, this is what I don't want, you start to see, like, man, I've been surrounding myself by what I don't want for so long.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to keep me back from getting what I want. And then the next step is like, okay, I know what I want. I've got a vision of my future. I need to create a path for that. What's my first step? For me, it was like, I really want to feel supported, and I want to know that there's love, and I want to create a life where I feel like I am showing my child something that's truly positive so that I break the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I focused first on love and stability. And I created the path, the boundary around this is what I want, this is what I won't accept. And then I just went out on so many dates and put that to the test, and then found somebody who hit all of the marks that I was looking for. And then, now we're married, and it gave me space to then go, all right, well, I've got that dream part of my life. Man, what else do I want?
Mm-hmm.
And it started to build my next path and boundaries around that path towards creating a business that I could spread positive impact. And then I get to a point where I'm like, all right, that's awesome. What else do I want? So it doesn't have to be like everything all at once. It's just, one big change at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's, just what do you want?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And did you envision that your life, like back in the day before you started setting boundaries, when we were in that place of, oh, it's a bunch of baloney, did you imagine this life, or is it better than you imagined?
Oh, it's better than I
Me
imagined.
too. Me too.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I imagined was darn good.
I know. I know. I know. And as my husband says, and it keeps getting better. He's so, he's such a positive guy and he's always saying that. It just keeps getting better. And he's right. He's right. He said that
Yeah.
from the moment we started dating. It just keeps getting better. And, and he's right. I mean, I call him my normal. He's my normal.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah. When I need to find that balance, I go to him.
Absolutely. I love that for you too, because it just shows like, seriously, if you dream it, you can have better than you even dreamed of. And you can
Exactly.
come from the darkest of pasts.
And it didn't
And
all come at once. Yeah, exactly. And it
yeah,
took a lot of steps, a lot of work on the healing journey. I'm still on that journey. My life is not perfect, but I'm able to manage it so much better than I used to. It's so empowering to know that you can create your life, not have to just get through life, which is what I did for so long.
yeah, just getting through the next day.
Yeah.
100%.
Survival mode, just even getting through the next breath sometimes, it was just, it was not enjoyable.
It was
And
exhausting.
I was wondering why I was always so tired,
Yeah.
honestly, and for, like up until I was 21 or something, I smoked cigarettes, right? So, oh, that's what it is, right? It's cigarettes, makes sense. And I quit smoking, I hated it. And I was still tired. Well, now I look
Stress.
back, yeah, the stress and being in survival mode, and none of that's fun. And that's, I use boundaries to get out of that. I use boundaries within myself, kind of some goals to get myself out of the survival mode and the victim mindset that I was
Yeah.
so deeply living in.
Yeah. And that's like a big thing, just like every day.
Yeah.
Um, and I do mindset resets
Mm-hmm.
so that when I start to feel that stress and the overload and the weight on my shoulders and the heaviness of the world, and I start to feel like I used to,
Mm-hmm.
and I go, okay, look at how far I've come.
Yep. Yep.
Period. Yeah, just
Exactly. And the thing is, when you start to catch yourself going back into that, you have the self-awareness to catch that and go, oh no, oh no, I'm not going backwards.
yeah,
There's a lot of empowerment, and we're saying, I'm sure, I know I'm saying this to encourage the listeners that being in that place where you and I were at, that is a frustrating, sometimes it's torture sometimes, because you just don't know how to get out of that loop. You don't know how to get out of that place that you're at. You see it out there, but it's like, what is the thing that can catch and help me get out of that? And really, so much of it is just focusing on your healing one step at a time. Sometimes you'll have big steps and big aha moments, but for the most part, it's the baby steps. And then you look back and you do like we do, like, oh my gosh, look where I've come from.
yeah. Like, whoa, we did that.
We did that.
And then now we get to like have these talks and really show people like you can do it too. Like
Exactly.
It's not easy. We understand it's not easy, but there are so many different support groups out there.
Hmm.
Online, you can reach out to so many different people for assistance if you don't have that family because of the isolation that has
Right.
occurred. There's options out there for you. And I think the biggest thing is just remembering like you are worthy of that life, of your dreams,
Hmm.
and it's okay to have boundaries around what you want.
That's right. And
And
and it might take you a while to get it, but that's okay. Be patient. It's worth the wait. Trust me. It's worth it.
yeah. And I think one of the things I hear in argument of it is, well, boundaries are so selfish. Well, why not? Why shouldn't it be selfish for you to go, no, I'm not going to be talked to like that?
Right. Right.
You
Right.
you deserve to be looking out for yourself in that instance, right? So,
Right. I mean, would you want to stand there and watch someone yell at someone else and not try to stop that or intervene or try to help them? So why is it okay for someone to do that to you?
oh yeah.
That's I used to jokingly say, not jokingly, I meant it at the time. I just realized I didn't understand the depth of it, of being your own best friend. And,
Mm.
I used to say, would you treat someone else like that? And so, I look at, and I use that example a lot in my life, but I needed to go deeper. It's more than just that, it's just the everyday life. It's not just how other people treat me, but how am I treating myself?
Mm.
What am I doing to take care of myself? Because it does sound selfish. Oh, I got to take care of myself. But look, you and I are in the business of helping others, and we
Yeah.
have to take care of ourselves. And that's how it is. And we have to take care of ourselves in order to take care of others. And that's true for so many people in our position that, if we want to be able to be there for others, we've got to be there for ourselves first and have the energy ourselves. And that's where setting boundaries is really important. And at first, I could do that step, but then I would feel guilty.
Hmm.
Now I don't feel
Yeah.
guilty because I know how important it is.
Oh, it is 100% a struggle. Especially as an entrepreneur, when there's so many different things that you could be doing on your business and supporting other people. It's so easy to get up in the morning and get straight to work and then
Mhm.
work all day and then go to bed, right? And in some instances, yes, that's needed where you have to dedicate time to your growth right now so that you can enjoy life a little bit more later.
Mhm.
But you still need to protect your time and set those boundaries around your care because, yeah, otherwise you're going to go to bed and not have done anything for yourself that day,
Yeah. Or
that
burn out.
week. Yeah. And it's a real thing.
Mhm.
So, like, that's one of the things that I have blocked on my calendar. I have an hour every morning dedicated, and it says self care, love yourself. It's a notification, comes up on my phone. It's just a nice reminder to be like, look, put time into yourself first.
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, in the stuff that I do, because I do so much research on trauma and child abuse and all, it can be a little much. And so I knew that even before I started the podcast, I knew that I'm going to have to be really careful with my time, careful with how much I dive into this stuff, and make sure that I take time away from it, that I take time for me. And as much as I can, and most weekends I can pull it off where I'm not working. I'm doing stuff for me or around the house that I enjoy doing, go work in the yard, play with the dogs, whatever, just to get away from it because it sucks me in. If I step into my office and I sit down, that's it. And so I literally set timers when I start to do my research and stuff. I will set a timer for 45 minutes. I will get up when that timer goes off and go outside or do something to move around. And so all that stuff, it feels weird. And, at first it feels weird. And at first you'll feel guilty, but I'm able to sustain myself through the day. And I
Yeah.
am able to rest at night and get up the next morning and feel refreshed because of that.
Well, especially in your case, because that technique actually enhances productivity because you're giving yourself an X amount of time to do stuff before you take a break. And, there's that law. I don't remember the name of it. I think it's the Parkinson's law, where if you give yourself all day to do something, it'll take all day to do it. Where it's just a 15-minute task, you could have had it done first thing in the morning, but you left it until the end of the day.
So true. So
Yeah, so
true.
your technique is really great for getting more done.
Yeah, because I can spend that 45 minutes completely focused on that and not feel guilty and not let anything distract me. I mean, my phone is put away. I'm not doing anything but that particular thing that I'm working on. And you're right. And I'm able to crank out probably in that 45 minutes a good hour and a half worth of work.
Absolutely. And then getting up and taking that time to rest and refresh, because if we go at stuff for too long, brain fog happens, we
Yeah.
lose our creativity, we start to dislike what we're doing,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's definitely a balance. And that's where those boundaries come in. You set boundaries around that time, which allows you to complete more while still taking care of yourself.
Exactly. It's a balance, and every day it's different, right? Every day we have to look at it differently because yesterday is not going to be like today, or today's not going to be like yesterday. And so you've got different challenges each day, or maybe not. And so I literally take every day, with the same kind of rules, but I'm careful about holding things too tightly, and
Mm.
being too rigid. Sometimes I'll be in the middle of work and I just get real tired. I'm like, you know what? I just need to go lay down for 20 minutes and rest.
Yeah.
So, all of this, everybody, is out there for you to do for yourselves, and give yourselves permission. I'm telling you, at first, you're probably going to feel guilty. Just let it slide by. Don't let it stop you from doing the little things that you need, that refresh you, that help you bring balance in your life and joy, right?
Oh, yeah. And just build your schedule around what you want to accomplish. Like, if you need to put something in your schedule to say, take care of yourself, take a
Yes.
break, take your mindset rest, like, get up and go walk around. Um, every month, I schedule in something fun that's where I start my scheduling. At first we do our fun, and then we build our schedule around that so that we're
Ah,
protecting that part as well.
so you be sure to
Because
have that in your schedule. Yes,
yes, do something new. Try That's what we're here for. Like, experience life. If you're just
exactly.
working all the time, then what are you working for?
Yeah, I got a lot of money in the bank. I just don't have any time to enjoy it.
Yeah, go and
Right?
actually enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. And
You
share
know?
that joy. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. Well, this has been really good. I always have this one question. What do you want to leave our listeners with?
So I would say, just remember that you are worthy of having the life that you want, no matter what other people have tried to tell you or have tried to make you believe, right? No matter where you are at in your journey, you can get into your dream life path by visualizing what you actually want, setting those boundaries, sticking to them, and really just getting where you want to go, because you deserve it.
That's right. You and I aren't any special than anybody else, right?
No, not at all.
Not at
We
all.
just were able to set those boundaries and get through it. And now it's like, come on, we're here for you. If you need assistance, like, reach out to us, and we're gonna more than happy to help you along this path.
So yeah, with that said, how would the listeners reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can find me at managedbymagic.com. There's a top 20s boundaries guide that you can download to really help you set those. There's 100 affirmations for you to really reset your mind when things start to get negative. And then you can have a free consultation call if you're really wondering, okay, how do I set that dream life path?
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing. It's so interesting that our lives are kind of parallel, and I find that to be true in so many cases, but it's so interesting that, we're kind of on the same journey,
Yeah,
parallel.
and I love it. It's like, we're not alone.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. I love it.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And I so appreciate it.
Thank you so much.